Hello, everyone, and welcome to not the DigiVerse DiveCast, but bonus content because we couldn't record this week because Discord's a horrible program made by horrible people. So, this is our
Yeah.
second attempt because my mic fucked up and then crashed OBS. Don't worry about it. Anyway, to be more concise than the previous attempt on this, we're going to be talking about the process for retranslating, I guess, Liberator, since it's an interesting process and I get to vent about the shit I have to personally deal with to get this shit done. And also Bridget can explain her process for like the actual translation portions of it.
Yay.
So, for those of you who don't know somehow, we, like me, Bridget, and then Leon is assisting, as well as another friend of ours, Nazo, who is helping with the actual like translation part because they speak proper Japanese better than the rest of us. So they're mostly helping Bridget with like quality checking the translation itself. Are retranslating Digimon Liberator because the official translations uploaded by Bandai are using MTL very obviously because there's a lot of really awkward phrasing, contractions do not exist in it, and it looks like shit, it's typeset like shit, it reads like shit, it's bad, and it's disgusting, and it's gross that they're using a machine translation for an official upload. So, we got mad, and we're redoing it from scratch. Chapter 0 went up a little earlier this week, or last week, I guess, at this point. That is on
Like late last
MangaDex.
week, yeah.
Yeah, that is on MangaDex. I'm not going to link any manga sites in the description. You know what MangaDex
That's a
is.
bad idea.
Just go to
Yeah.
it, look up Digimon Liberator. It is the for whatever reason it's on that site twice. It's the one that has chapter 0 as the icon and has more bookmarks. That is the right one. It's the chapter is uploaded under Scanco Broke Guy. Right.
I can't believe you guys actually went with the fucking name. I just
It's
kinda threw that one in there.
it's such a good name because I was like, we gotta call ourselves Scamco Broke Guy. And then you were just like, what if it was scan instead for the sake of, it's a manga scanlation? Well, webcomic, but whatever.
Mm,
Same shit.
Webcomic scanlation thing, yeah.
So this oh, right. And as far as release schedule, there is no one. There's no schedule. We will eventually be
Mm,
getting caught up to the official release, and we are waiting until full chapters are uploaded because they do like a part 1, part 2 every other week. So it'll be roughly
yeah, so
every month.
so basically how this works for from Bandai's part is that, like, every 2 weeks you get a part of a chapter, and at least so far, the chapter's typically always been 2 parts. So, effectively, you get part 1 of a chapter 2 weeks, part 2 of a chapter the other 2 like, the next 2 weeks, and then you sort of get, like, this, like, cadence of, like, a chapter a month from this. Um, and the way we're doing this is because, like, doing the parts is, like, very inconvenient and, like, it doesn't really flow well, especially with the way that Manga Dex, like, uploads stuff, or lets us
Yeah.
upload stuff rather.
Yes.
So we wait until the, like, month is over, the full chapter's out, and then between, like, the fact that it takes quite a bit to work on this, and also the fact that, we don't really wanna get too close to Bandai's official releases because that gets a bit murky. We As much as we, like, don't necessarily like the product they put out, it is, unfortunately kind of imperative that people are able to, like, first support the official product instead of immediately being able to go over to our version instead. Not that I think that's going to be like a huge issue, but, like, just for the sake of, like, optics and not potentially getting fucking, like, CND, like, we will likely,
Yeah.
once we caught up, wait about a week after the official, like, full chapters uploaded for us to release our version.
Yep. So it should still be once a month once we are actually caught up, which shouldn't take that long. At this point, it's more like however long it takes Bridget and Nazo to do the actual translation part because I have chapters 1 and 2 cleaned and assembled. So, well, I have half of chapter 2 at this point, but because
Yeah.
I'm going to explain the
Well,
process I have
I'm
to fucking go
hoping
through.
I have, like, a big thing coming up in like 2 days, and then hopefully once that's done, I have like basically like 2 to 3 weeks off. So that
Yep.
should give me time to just upload like the chapter one, chapter two, and like at least what's out of chapter three, like translations.
I mean, chapter 3 is gonna be done next Thursday, so
Yeah. So hopefully, like I'll get those up, and then we get are caught up soon.
yep. Okay, so the actual process. So, basically what winds up happening is, Bridget will take the proper Japanese chapter because those are readily available on Bandai's website. You can just switch
Yeah.
the page to Japanese, and then it's like there's a toggle in the upper right corner, and you just look at the Japanese chapters, which are, of course, the actual, like, original written material, so it makes any amount of sense, and it doesn't read like garbage. And she basically just retranslates it bubble by bubble, right?
So my process is like because I have been studying Japanese for roughly like 2 to 3 years, I want to say,
Mhm.
and I'm not perfect in it. I'm not very fluent in it. I do pretty well with like specifically like vocalized Japanese, like like oral, like talking and stuff. Written Japanese, specifically like kanji, obviously, because fucking if you're 2 and 3 years in, you don't know your katas and your hiras yet. What the fuck are you doing? Um, it's still a bit of a challenge for me. So I unfortunately have to kind of do this thing where I take a look at the officially translated lines, um, and I kind of look at those from a right angle of like how would I like rephrase this to make this sound like a sentence a human being would say at all, which is very difficult because these are very constraining bubbles to work through, like, in terms of, like, how much real estate literally how much, like, spatial real estate you have to work with, and you have to fit the information that is presented within this real estate, which is part of where I think, like, the AI translation is fucking up constantly because it's an AI, it doesn't know good contractions, it doesn't know, like, quick phrasing. So it types out like full ass lines. And that's what's like I think forcing the whoever they do have to like um change up the English version of this comic to like make like these bigger bubbles that sometimes like don't really fit the flow of the page, can sometimes even like obscure like details in the artwork.
Yeah, don't worry, I got
So I
screenshots for
basically
that.
try to I basically try to retool those into sentences that work like that flow and that work a lot better. And then I also like simultaneously do try to cross-reference the original Japanese version to make sure that like I am not just kind of cleaning up what is like effectively a total mistranslation. Um, this is where Nazo often comes in because I can like tell when something is maybe not quite right. Like maybe like the sentence just doesn't flow into the conversation at all, or like I do notice that like looking at the kanji with my limited reading capabilities, like, hey, this doesn't. I don't know if this is 100% right, and that's when I could uh ping Nazo to be like, hey, can you look over this one and this one for me because like I feel like I feel like there's something like wrong here.
Mhm.
Um I really wish that I had the capabilities of to just look at the Japanese version and then just translate from that. I wish that I was like fluent enough to do that because I feel like we're putting out a much more readable product, but it is still not ideally what I would want it to be in terms of like the pure translation like quality. But unfortunately, like I don't think anyone else is going to pick up a project like this that is effectively officially being released in English. So kind of the
Yeah,
best we got. Sorry.
and I mean, another small area where Nazo has been a fucking godsend is tone. Oh my god. There are
Yeah.
so because a machine translation does not understand what tone is. So, like, I'm not gonna go into long-winded explanations, but basically, there's a lot of small variations in the way, like, Japanese is written and spoken that, like, because it's all like, there's levels of politeness, et cetera. I'm sure most people no, I'm not even gonna say that. Japanese is a very polite language. at a baseline. And there are certain things you can do to make it less polite, more polite, et cetera, and they don't have proper, like, direct correlations to English. So
Yep.
a machine translation is going to completely miss the nuance and context of things like that, which is a big help when Nazo comes in as like, hey, like, or I will even ask, hey, I feel like the tone here is completely wrong. Like, what, like, how would this sound to like someone who actually speaks the language? And that's been a huge help in
Yeah.
specifically the way like Arisa talks. Because Arisa is
Yeah.
just completely fucking different in the way the way we basically wound up writing her lines.
So this is a part, and I'm not gonna go too big into let's call it culture war stuff over this
Yeah.
topic because God knows, Fire Emblem Fates came out 8 years ago, so it's been a bit. It's been a.
What
I'm tired.
are you talking about?
But
Neo 12 came out 3 years ago.
God damn it. But what a lot of people I don't think realize about like specific because if you like translate like because I am like at least like natively bilingually like Dutch and English, and then like kind of vaguely trilingually with Japanese, but not I'm not native level even close. So kind of. But like if you translate like one Anglo like what I would say like is one like Anglo like English like like Germanic is the right word like Germanic based language to another, there's usually not like there's like discrepancies in sentences that you do have to kind of like maybe put in a different word to like sort of flow naturally in the other language. But generally speaking, translation from one Germanic language to the other can be fairly one to one. With again couples like sense structure differences essentially, but mostly is the same. To to do Japanese to English translation basically means you have to like partially be a writer. Um,
Yep.
you have to be able to not only infer but convey character voices, tone, personality quirks in a completely different way from the Japanese version. Because just the way, like, just putting in the Japanese word, like, one often doesn't convey it. Two sounds like fucking dog shit in English. So you basically have to rewrite it so it's still conveyed, it makes sense in English, and it reads naturally within the otherwise established script of the work you're doing. It is it has been a little bit strenuous to like sort of balance that, again, like get like Arisa, who is a lot more kind of, she's a very young, very zoomer, like the kind of ditzy character, I would say. Um you have Shoto, who's just like kind of a bit more of like he's a bit more of like a dope, honestly. He's kind
Yeah.
of stupid
He's kind of an
sometimes.
idiot. It's great.
And you sort of have to like make sure that that comes through naturally enough, like in again in a way that makes sense in English. So there's just been a lot of like just having to break apart a sentence and rewrite it from the ground up in a way where it's like, okay, well, how do we have Shoto say this thing in a way that makes sense for his character to say at this moment? And it is like a thing you basically constantly have to do. So it feels like I'm almost in part like not rewriting these characters, but like I'm kind of writing these characters myself in a sort of twisted way. It's been a very interesting process going through that.
Yep. And then, like, obviously, where mostly me and Leon come in is after Bridget has kind of redone each individual line. Me and Leon will kind of skim over it and just make small adjustments where needed. Where just like, as me and Leon are both I, we're native English speakers. I like it doesn't make that big of a difference because Bridget has been speaking English for basically her entire life at this point.
I literally have a certificate that says I'm not just native like speaker. I'm above native speaker. Like
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Sometimes like there's just conversationally like some things that I miss. Usually it's just because like I admittedly like sometimes my drafts are a bit rough because there's like three people fucking like checking over it. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like
Mhm.
sometimes I just kind of miss something and I don't really do a second draft of that or like I do a very quick second draft of that because I'm like, oh well, there's like literally three other people that are going to check this after me, so
Yeah,
like
it's more or less you're just like, all right, here's the baseline, go nuts. And so we just kind
yeah.
of go through it line by line, and we're like, okay, we could tweak this word here, or we could rearrange words here to make it sound more natural to like how someone this age, this demographic would be speaking. Um,
That has been kind of a thing for me specifically. These characters are all like 10 years younger than I am, so like it's been
yeah.
I feel
Uh
old.
there were a couple lines where I actually had to reach out to a mutual friend of ours named Tora, because she is 20 years old. She is the youngest person we know, and I was just like, "Hey, in this situation, what would you probably say? Because you're the youngest girl we know, and we need someone who would talk maybe the same as Arissa."
Yeah.
It's
So
it's it's been a fun little time.
and but it's like like this is why I was like really because this shit start. I mean this shit's been going on with like Bandai and like Digimon specifically for a while. Like there's huge swaths of the Cyber Sleuth translation that are very
Oh,
clearly machine translated. The Digimon Survive translation. I'm sure that there was like one person who looked over that, but like, that shit like we don't have the exact fact of this, but like I have to bet that like that shit is like was at least on the baseline machine translated because some of that shit just reads bad, like it
yep.
just reads not good. Um, and then I think like the one where like we were really starting to see the tipping point of like, oh, you guys are like full on using MTL for this stuff was the Digimon Seekers translation.
Yeah, that shit was like inexcusably bad. The Seekers chapters in English are borderline unreadable.
It is like like I'll talk about that later. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
like that was the one where like I really started noticing that like, oh, this is like a problem. And then I was like, okay, well, this is like like Seekers I felt like was like kind of almost like like a holdover, like not to like diminish the value of that. I feel but like I feel like that felt like that was much more of like a sort of holdover project until like the next proper like really marketable mainline Digimon thing could take off.
Yeah, the thing based
So
on the TCG, which Digimon
the
is a
most
TCG franchise now.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, well, that sucks, but like I can kind of understand, like, not that I like agree with it, but like I understand why a company like this would take a project like this and use MTL for it instead of like doing the proper work for it. Um, but like I was like, okay, well, let's see, like Digimon Liberator, they're putting like a lot into this. Like this thing is getting its own sets, it's got its own theme song, they're doing like these blog updates and stuff. Like it felt like this was like basically like a mainline Digimon anime project that wasn't actually an anime in terms of how they were treating it and like how this was like being like presented to us. So I'm like, okay, let's see what this is. And then that first fucking chapter comes out, like the first part is chapter 0, and I was just like, motherfucker,
Yeah.
you motherfuckers. And
Yeah.
that's when I like because I was the first one I think to like go ahead with. I was like, no, I've had enough.
Mhm.
This sucks. Like just
And
as like fans of this franchise, do we deserve a fucking better product than this? Come on.
yep. And then I offered to do editing and redrawing where needed, uh, which, as it turns out, became necessary very fucking quickly. Because that first half of chapter 0, no redrawing was required. And then we hit the
Yeah.
second half of chapter 0. And then we hit the rest of the chapters. And I'm just like, oh my God, okay. Redrawing is super fucking necessary now. And then because I actually have past experience doing redraws and typesetting for a manga series I was part of a scanlation group for like a year. um, I'm not going to mention the series because it uses my old online handle because you can very clearly see it under the redrawer name, and I don't want most people knowing about that. But I did do it for a year. Um, it was very fun and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I haven't had the chance to like do this kind of project in a while. And as it turns out, I really fucking enjoy doing this kind of stuff. So, you know, I was happy to do this. And then Leon wound up coming in to help because he actually had Clip Studio EX, which makes the typesetting portion of this significantly easier. But then he got really, really, really busy because he has a billion art projects going on. So I just got Studio EX and wound up doing the typesetting myself. All right. So, well, let's show some examples of the kind of shit. So, at a baseline, in order to actually do this, we use a site to get the individual images off of the source upload from the
Do we
English.
use this source upload or do we use? I
Well,
forgot. Do we use source upload or do we use Webtoon?
I mean, I didn't want to specify anything for the sake of covering
Oh,
our own asses, but yeah, you can't use the source upload, so we have to use Webtoon, which is why I can't use the original Japanese version, which leads to some interesting workarounds that I will explain. But yeah, so I have to use the English version of the uploads, and they are split into individual images that are 800 pixels by 1280 pixels, which are not clean breaks. They are very rarely clean breaks. It is usually like cutting an image in half and stuff like that. So what I have to do, because these images are not named, they are named, but they are not named in any kind of order. So when I get them, they are just in a fucking pile in a folder. I have to go into Clip Studio, open up a new like webcomic webtoon file, and then slowly piece together individual pages of the webcomic by putting the individual 800 by 1280 images in like the page and arranging them into the correct order and like lining them up and everything. And once I do that and it's separated into proper actual pages, then I can like start cleaning the bubbles and fucking redrawing panels where necessary. Sometimes they make adjustments to the English bubbles because the MTL is terrible and is really overly wordy. So, what I have to do is open up the Japanese version of the webcomic from the official upload on the site, take a fucking screenshot of it at a higher resolution, and then put it like overlay it while adjusting the size without losing, like in a way that doesn't lose quality over the thing I've already made and then realign that so it looks correct. I have had to do this many times. This is just to get this shit looking correctly in a format that is uploadable to MangaDex. To say nothing of the
so
actual redrawing process.
yeah, because like a kind of huge part of like all of this, and this was something that I struggled with in the initial like fucking I think like a Google Doc couplet I made of like chapter 0 part 1 is that like we do want to keep in mind the fact that this is like the format it is in for a reason, right? Like
Yeah.
this is uploaded as one long continuous like flowing image and that is like basically part of the medium. So in order for us to do this translation in a way that made, because like I feel like I just personally felt like the idea of like doing a retranslation, but then like completely like kind of negating like the entire point of like the medium this is like made in just seemed kind of nonsensical to just do like
Yeah.
baseline. So we did like agree, but like we wanted to like preserve the format of like one image, like long flowing.
Mhm. Which unfortunately is something I alone have to deal with, but it's fine. It's kind of fun in its own weird way. It's like putting together a puzzle, except all the pieces kind of look exactly the same, and they're named things like 120 underscore horrid string of 20 characters. And you would think, oh, 120, that sounds like it's like numbered in like an order. It's not. I
It's
don't know.
not.
I don't know why they're called that. They just fucking throw random numbers on there. But yeah, so I do have a couple examples of things I had to tweak and I have a couple examples from the
Put
initial
the
chapter
feedback up real
zero.
quick, by the way.
Was that?
Put the feedback up.
Oh, yes, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot the Discord crash. There you go. So I have a couple examples of things I had to either go back and take the original Japanese panel and kind of like. So the first example is actually probably the best one because it's something I had to do every little fucking thing for. So, this is the original English upload we got. So, you can read the line, you can see how, like, yeah. So, the big thing.
The fucking text breaking out of the speech bubble that they had to enlarge in.
Yeah, so they made that bubble bigger and then broke the boundaries on it anyway. So the second and third bubble are the important ones here because those are the ones that were changed for the English upload of it. They extended these bubbles and then broke the boundaries on them anyway, which is stupid and terrible. So what I had to do, and here's the version we wound up going with. So I had to take the original Japanese upload and paste it on top of this so that I had the correct bubble sizes. And then, because it was covering portions of the sound effect, because the original Japanese didn't have the English sound effect, obviously, I had to selectively erase parts of the patch job I did and then redraw stuff that I couldn't erase because the original Japanese sound effect was under there. That was mostly sections of the mirror and shelf that are just to the left of the bubble. Because in the Japanese version, the sound effect is there. So I had to erase that portion of it, but then there was stuff blocking it, so I had to redraw it underneath. It's complicated. But yeah. So, and then you can see the actual translation we had to do where, again, Shoto is not very, like, intense in the way he talks. He
Yeah.
very much cuts Arisa off here with, like, a very terse kind of response. Like, it's very
So that's why
small
we
in the
went from a
bubble. Yeah.
very bold, very explanation no to just a like much more calm, laid back nah.
Nah. And again, it cuts her off, as demonstrated by the fact that she doesn't finish saying what she was trying to
Yeah, she
say.
did. So this is something that like an AI translation just always gets fucking wrong for some reason. Is that like it doesn't like you like there's no room for like sentence breaks or cutoffs or something like that. Like it has to just type the full sentence. This is just a thing kind of endemic in most AI models in terms of like writing and translating. So things like this, where it's very clearly meant to be Arisa says a thing, Shoto goes, nah. And then she reacts to that, like just isn't conveyed in the official translation because of that exact problem.
Mhm. And again, the way Arisa speaks, like, a 17-year-old girl isn't going to say, "You have to try Liberator." Like, that's not that's not how teenagers talk. Like, "You gotta"
Yeah.
is much like, most people say "you gotta." That's like,
Yeah.
people don't say "you have to try." Like, that's so, like, what's the word? Stiff. It's so stiff. Like, people don't talk like that. Just very much things that are just like, it doesn't, like, really click with most people when they're reading it, but when you see it and think about it, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, this just kinda reads really, like, stiff and stilted." That's why, like, this is another reason why we really, wanted to do this. And then the main reason why I readjusted these, because there are plenty of bubbles they edited that I didn't bother readjusting. The really important thing I did this time around for this one specifically was, as you can see, at that last bubble, they kind of covered a cute little detail right above her head. There's a small picture frame. The English version of the bubble just completely blocks the picture frame, which isn't important, but it's a cute little detail that lets you know in advance that Arisa and a later character who actually just appeared in the first half of chapter 3, Violet, are friends and they know each other. It's a cute little detail, and it really pissed me off that in the English version people just don't get to see that. That's why I went out of my way to fix this particular panel. All right, let's see. What's my next one? I have to do these in, like, order here. Oh god, this one. Okay. Um, so this is what took me. This took me, I think, like, 2 hours to do. So this fucking panel.
Hmm.
So I don't think I really need to go into detail about why this looks like fucking shit, especially if you've seen the original Japanese version of this speech bubble. This looks fucking terrible. Like, in every way, shape, and form, this looks like shit. It just the arrangement is garbage. There's so much empty space in the bubble. So what I did
I
was
also
yeah.
personally kind of feel like a sound effect like scream like this doesn't wouldn't typically even be in a white bubble.
Uh, typically not, like, generally, like, because he's actually screaming, because you can't see it, but at the bottom of the panel, it is coming out of, like, a small silhouetted, Shoto who's, like, flailing in
Yeah.
the air. So it's just to represent that, like, he's falling. So, basically, in the original Japanese, and you'll see it in the well, I'll just put up my version of it. So this is what I wound up doing. Um, and this I literally based this exactly off the Japanese version of this bubble, where like the size of the lettering and the position, there's the bubble breaking and all that kind of stuff to really emphasize like how erratic it is and like the trail the letters follow, the size of the individual characters, letting you know that it's like it starts like kind of low, gets very loud, and then trails as he falls further out of frame to the point where like the letters kind of trail off into a little line. Which again, I literally copied this directly from the Japanese version of the panel, including the like action lines on the characters, which was a fucking nightmare to do. So basically, for this, what I had to do is every single one of those A's is an individual text box that I manually adjusted the size of and rotated and stuff like that to follow along with the kind of layout of the Japanese version of the panel. Uh, and then, unfortunately, what I had to do was I had to, on a separate raster layer, for people who know what that means, because the letters are vector based, um, go in and add because all the letters were originally just like black, just like a normal black text. I had to
Mhm.
go in and add the speed lines as a separate layer on top, put all of it into a folder, and then created a gradient overlay on top of the folder that clipped into it, so that it only applied the gradient overlay to the letters and the speed lines contained within the folder. And then I had to turn off because the gradient overlay isn't perfect. It doesn't anti-alias quite correctly. So like there was like a very thin haloing of like the black letters underneath it. So what I had to do then was go in and because the gradient overlay, even if the layer it was clipping into wasn't active and visible, it would still show up. So I had to go off and turn off individual letters to make sure it didn't have that weird black haloing. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that for the letters that broke the bubble boundary because then the stroke on them would also turn off. So like the white outline on the letters that break the bubble wouldn't be there. So I had to leave those on. But thankfully those are all smaller ones. So the very small anti-aliased black outline around the overlay doesn't quite show at the resolution you view the comic at. This took fucking forever because I basically had to learn how to do this on the fly. This is not something I ever had to do before, but I am extremely proud of how it turned out, and I think it looks so much fucking better than the official one. So much fucking better. Ugh. But yeah, this was something that took a very long time, and I'm very proud of it, which is the main reason I want to show it off. Because Jesus Christ, I fucking hate the English version of this panel so much. Oh, it looks like fucking garbage. Fucking word art. Uh, then there was this fucking thing. Oops, I forgot to turn off the whatever. This fucking panel. So the one on the left is obviously the official English. The one on the right here is my version. This was a lot simpler. I just didn't like the bad word art they used to put the kind of
They have a very standardized, like, comic font they try to use for sound effects, which, like, looks kind of, like, fine in certain instances, but, like, it's one of those things that kind of I feel like it, like, loses personality the more they use it, the more you kinda realize, like, "Oh, you're, like, this is, like, a standard font you're
mhm.
using."
Yep. There are several bubbles and several panels where it is very clear that the lettering was hand drawn. This was one of them, where it was a very rough, um, like, a very rough, like, little sound effect of him grunting as he hits the ground. So again, while referencing the original Japanese version of the bubble, just kind of recreated it in English from scratch, where I literally just used a basic pencil tool that had, like, a nice rough texture to it and just kind of drew out the English letters, roughly using the same kind of, like, layout of the panel, and, just put the white stroke on it to kinda give it that little pop effect. And I think it looks significantly better. And again, "guh" is a better vocalization than "ugh." That's a personal
Yeah.
preference, though.
God is a much more like, oh, like this is like, I'm like being like hit in the stomach. I go, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Or like ugh is more like an utterance of annoyance than anything.
Generally, yeah. Like, the way people use these nowadays, like, no one says "ugh" as, like, a expression of exertion.
Yeah,
It's definitely more used as, like, "ugh," that kind of thing.
yeah.
So, yeah, this was just another instance of me being like, "Okay, I'm, like, handwriting this bubble because I need to." And then the last example I had was actually the first one I did. And this is one where I was just like, I can't believe they didn't even fucking try. Let me just make sure this is correct. Yeah. So, on the left, the official version of Arisa giving the rapid fire explanation of what the D storage in particular does and a lot of functions of Liberator as a game. And on the right, my fixed version that actually keeps the original spirit of the panels in which you can't even read it fully because all the letters are contained within the bubbles and getting cut off because she's speaking so quickly that Shoto clearly doesn't fucking understand a word she's saying. This was actually relatively simple. I just erased the inside of the bubbles, put a gradient behind the actual like full comic that, the bubbles were transparent and the gradient was behind them. And then in between those two layers, just put the text and then, made it so they went outside the bubble. Very simple, very easy fix. Did not take any time at all to actually do. The most extensive part was waiting for Nazo to give me like a rough idea of what she was actually saying in the bubbles because the English translation isn't even right for the majority of the time. They grabbed like small bits and pieces of what she's actually saying and split it up among all of the bubbles. The majority of what she actually says in Japanese is not included in the English, in the official English here. It sucks. Fuck Bandai, lazy assholes. So yeah,
But I feel like it's worth pointing out that when we say this, we are like not speaking on any like employees parentheses probably some poor fucking intern
no.
who is like the one being saddled with this. Like it doesn't like matter how much passion or talent an employee has if they are not given the proper time and resources to make the product good, then basically no one would be able to salvage a product like this.
Yep.
And it is so when we are saying this and when we are like criticizing this, we are not criticizing any individual who had to like go back in and try to clean up or fix whatever the fuck like they got. Because I just also imagine that like the comics drawn and then like whoever's working on this is basically given like no time at all to like make sure that this is in English so that
Hmm.
these can be like simultaneously uploaded.
Hmm.
Which is why you get things like okay, the like this bubble, just like I'm just gonna fucking enlarge it, put it there. If this like covers up any detail, so be it. Because it's like so whenever we say this, we mean directly like the lazy assholes and the people running this are specifically like Bandai higher up who are clearly not giving whoever it is that's working on the English version of this the time and resources necessary to make this the product that it should be.
Yep. Yeah, because again, this is entirely like a management and corporate issue. The fucking suits don't want to spend the time. They don't want to pay someone to do a proper translation job because they're pieces of shit and are like thinking about their bottom line exclusively, as you know, management
Corporations
is.
do.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's just how it is. Um, so they're just basically like, Again, I get like Bridget said, they're probably throwing it to some random intern who's just like, Make sure this is readable in English."
You get like 2 hours
Yeah.
before we upload this. Like, so
It's like, oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Unfortunately, chapter 0 didn't have any, particularly extensive redraws I had to do. So you guys don't get to see any of that until chapter 1 gets uploaded, because chapter 1 had plenty of stuff where I had to be like, "Okay, so as of chapter 1, they really, really like breaking those bubble boundaries," which meant that I had to redraw background elements quite more often. In chapter 2 specifically, there was something that I had to spend a good fucking amount of time basically redrawing, like, an entire half a panel, and I think it turned out pretty fucking good, but you'll see that when chapter 2 is uploaded and who knows how fucking long from now.
hopefully only a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
honestly.
And, like, I don't think
Uh,
we're gonna be making one of these videos for every single chapter. I think this is just something I wanted to do as, like, a, "Hey, here's what we're doing. Here's why it might take a little bit of time. Here's me venting a little bit about the rather large workload I'm putting on myself, because I don't have to do any of this. I could just fucking I could just, do a, like, poor quality redraw and then just throw the letters over it so it's less noticeable. But that would make me mad. I'm doing this for you. Mostly myself, but you as well, dear viewer."
so I wanted to well, I wanted to close this out with two things, but
Mhm,
the first thing I wanted to say before we like close this
mhm,
is there might be like some people, I imagine most people who watch this show are like wouldn't ask this, but you know there might be some people out there who ask like, well, like for me this was readable enough. Like I was
mhm.
able to read this and get things generally fine, and like so like I don't know if this was like worth the effort when it's like you know it is ultimately even if shoddily translated. I just it's a very personal thing. I just don't like viewing art in this way where it can be presented good enough and I like oh I can get the general details of things. That's just not how I like engaging with things. I always feel like it's like the little details and like the little character bits and quirks and stuff and like, you know, the little just elements in general that like an artist will add like personality or something or like a little bit of extra like characterization in or something but like what take a work from like content you read to like an actually like memorable piece of work and I felt like Bandai's like efforts lack thereof rather were highly diminishing what I could see was a really promising piece of media for this franchise
Yeah.
like straight up as of like you know we're only a little bit in but like 3 chapters in dude some of these characters have had like more going on than like most Digimon characters have had since this franchise like came back around the 2020s.
Yep. Violet has been here for half a chapter, and she's easily my favorite character, and I don't even really know what she's like yet because the translation fucked her dialogue so badly. But I can tell what she's supposed to be like, and that helps a lot. Also, there was the small detail about the alt art on her card having a background element that shows she has a self help book about how to make friends. And God, I love when characters are that flavor of pathetic. It's so endearing.
So that's why we are like making this effort. You know what the really funny thing is actually
What's up?
I didn't even really get into this initially to start retranslating the comic.
Yeah.
I'm much but like because I was like oh shit the novel might be bad I might have to get in on that and I like I've been reading it we'll see what happens when we catch up to the comic. But
It's
like initially I was just gonna be like, yeah, maybe like I'll try to like use my like you know like hone my writing slash Japanese skills by like doing this novel. And then the fucking first part of the comic came out. I'm like, oh god damn it! I'm gonna have to we're gonna have to do this one too, gang. Uh,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I guess like I kind of wrap this into like the first point, but also like I just kind of wanted to talk about the comic like itself.
Yeah.
Like now that like we've like done our first chapter and I've read ahead, like I've caught I'm like, when a new thing drops, I read it.
Yeah.
Pretty good so far.
Yeah. I've been really enjoying it. Like, they're like the actual like plot is pretty slow moving, but that's because this is a TCG comic where entire chapters are going to be dedicated to a duel where no plot is really happening. And they are relegating some of the story details to the Twitter articles, which are fucking fascinating, by the way. Please read those.
Yeah.
But it's been really enjoyable. Like, Shoto is a great protagonist. He's kind of a dumbass, and I love him.
I do personally the one concern I guess that I have with this format, I guess, is the fact that we are very slow moving, like we
Yeah.
are a chapter a month. And again, like there's pretty huge swaths of this where like story doesn't really happen because we have to go, play a card game. So I do wonder what like it like I wonder like how long Bandai's like planning to keep this one going,
Yeah.
because it's like say like or like it's like what Secret was like a year or something, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, if
Like
it's yeah.
in the scenario where this is just like a year long thing, like that's just 12 chapters. Like it's not really enough to tell a like full story with, and it feels like this again because so much is going to get taken up by a card game. You're gonna need like I feel like to keep both that and then also like tell a satisfying story. You're gonna need a lot of chapters, and you're basically releasing a chapter a month. So you're gonna have like if this wants to be like a full satisfying story thing, it's gonna have to be going for like several years. And
Yeah.
the concern I have with that is that Bandai is not very consistent about supporting a thing like that for several years. So
Nope.
I am admittedly just based on the format, just like a little bit concerned that at some point we're gonna like do a ghost game and really rush to a like unsatisfying conclusion.
Yeah, that
We don't
is
have anything that actually like ties to that, but the format like kind of like leaves the door open for that in a way that makes me a little not sure how I feel about that.
yeah, it is like just because of the nature of the pacing of a webcomic that has like this level of art and like this release schedule, because like the art in this is fucking gorgeous. Every single panel of this webcomic looks amazing. It is like beautiful from top to bottom. Unfortunately, that means that the story doesn't really go anywhere in individual half chapters. Like a ton of stuff happened in the first half of chapter 3, like a good amount. Violet was introduced, Cool Boy's introduced. They discuss a little more background information about like Shumon and Terramon. Like a bunch of stuff happens. But the entirety of chapter 2 is just Shoto versus like a conditional battle NPC. That's it. That's all that happens. Like nothing
Yeah.
really actually happens, with the exception of like Terramon's proper introduction. So like it's a bit uh-oh. Because if they decide, oh, there's gonna be 2 chapters where just, like, fucking everything happens right at the end. Like, I don't think that's going to happen because the TCG is basically what Digimon is at this point. It's
Yeah.
seemingly, anyway. That's what Bandai seems to be treating it as, which, you know, not a bad thing for me in particular because I love the TCG and I like playing it. But, it's concerning to say the least as far as, like, the future pacing of Liberator. I'm just fucking crossing my fingers and hoping that, like, this goes on for at a minimum 2 years. I feel like they could do, like, a pretty, like, short form self-contained story within 24 proper chapters if they start picking up the pace outside of duels a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
but, I would hope for 3 at a minimum if they are doing the monthly chapter schedule.
Um Also like Cool Boy's just here. Like it's really
Yeah, Cool
funny.
Boy's just here.
He's yeah, just cool boy.
He's one of the fucking game masters. He's the head game master.
He's like the game master. Yeah, it's really funny. I
Anyway,
really need to see him in like one duel at least. I need to
oh
fucking
yeah,
know what a mech out, dude.
very excited for the new Mechamon deck that we're gonna get
I
in
would play that.
BP21 or whatever.
I would play that in a fucking heartbeat. I love a little guy.
God. Anyway, before we get too
But
off topic talking about like yeah, okay. What's up?
yeah. So I have some concerns about this whole ordeal, and I hate Bandai so bad. I
Mhm.
hate them so bad.
Yeah, they suck.
Um, but
Sponsor us.
uh,
Or you know
but
what?
yeah.
No, don't sponsor us. Just fucking hire us to fix. Never mind. Continue. Sorry.
Um, yeah. No. I think this is the most exciting thing for me that we've gotten out of Digimon stories in a while. Because I really didn't like 2020. I'm not nearly as smitten with Ghost Game as Lotte is.
GG.
Seekers is fucking unreadable, so who cares? So this is definitely like of the new stuff. This has been the most exciting. I hope Bandai doesn't fuck this up harder than they've already done.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a good discussion and actually significantly longer than I expected it to be, but that's fine. So we kept it under an hour. That's really what I was aiming for. All right. So we'll see y'all next week because we will be recording an episode proper this week if it fucking kills me. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye bye.